Ever since the economy began to recover in 2009, lots of folks have predicted a double dip, a new recession, same thing globally. We're joined now by Mark Faber, who writes the awesomely named Gloom, Boom, and Doom report. Mark's joining us from Thailand. Mark, what is your view of the global economy? And then we'll specifically focus on the U.S. What's going to happen from here?
Well, first of all, if we break down the global economy into, say, Europe, the United States and Latin America, and Asia, then very clearly Europe is at the present time already in recession. It's not growing, it's rather contracting if you add up everything. In Asia, we had a very strong recovery post the lows in 2009, and in my view, the peak intensity of the recovery was reached about a year ago. And since then, the Asian economies have been slowing down meaningfully, including China, where the economy is growing at a much slower pace than the official statistics by the governments would suggest. In my view, in Asia, we don't have a recession yet, but we have no more growth at the present time. And in many countries, exports are down vis-a-vis a year ago. In many countries, industrial production is down compared to a year ago, and so forth and so on. So if any growth, then very, very little. In the United States, we have minimal growth, maybe 1%, maybe even less, depending on how do you measure the consumer price inflation. In other words, how do you adjust nominal GDP for inflation in order to get real GDP? My impression of inflation in the U.S. is that it is much, much higher than what the government is publishing.
So we're getting into the presidential election. It's getting really hot and heavy. Both candidates are slinging threats and complaints at each other. Is there anything that can be done? And if so, which candidate would actually be better for fixing the economy?
Well, I mean, to tell you the truth, if you put a gun on my head and you said you must choose either Mr. Obama or Mr. Romney, I say, please shoot.
Why? Why can't they do anything?
I think both are undesirable. The one is basically buying votes by distributing money through all kinds of subsidies. As you know, now almost half the households in America have one member that receives some subsidy by the government, either food stamps or Social Security or God knows what. And so Mr. Obama is a big-time spender. At the same time, you have Mr. Romney. He will also be a big-time spender, but less on social programs and more on the military. And the deficit, people talk about the fiscal cliff. They have no clue. It's not going to be a fiscal cliff. It's the fiscal Grand Canyon, endless.
All right, so given that we're stuck with our two candidates, what is your outlook for the U.S. economy over the next couple of years?
I think very, very moderate growth, if at all. And if the global economy slows down meaningfully, then we have no growth in the U.S. and we have to look at corporate profits. I mean, we are investors. We're interested essentially to make money. And as you know, the economy could be weak and the stock market could go up because of liquidity injections. That's a possibility. But I think one of the headwinds is that corporate profits here and there will disappoint, because about 40% of S&P earnings come from overseas. And if, as I said, there is no growth in Europe or recession in Europe and no growth in Asia and other emerging economies, where will the profit growth come from?